phone, so Isaac. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are the ones we came up with. We came up with a lot more negative. So, for positive, oh, it's their choice. They're a bachelor, free spirit, adventurous. They're called to be single, independent. The negative ones we heard was like lonely, something must be wrong with them, too picky, spinster, old maid, weird, trying too hard, depressed, afraid of commitment, desperate, isolated, not good enough, need someone to be complete, and you can't be happy, or you can never be completely happy when single. This is what I have heard a lot of my friends, and what I've even said to myself, both positive and negative. Yeah.
What does spinster?
A spinster, so like, okay, you call like a single, like older guy a bachelor, like, oh, he's a bachelor even when he's like in his 50s. A spinster is an unmarried woman. Yeah, it doesn't sound very nice, is it?
I thought it was a bachelorette.
So, you know, if you get older and someone's like, oh, it's a spinster, it's like, oh, yeah. It's not as nice sounding as like, a bachelor.
I've been watching the fall show
Okay.
for so long.
So, but this is kind of what we come up with. We don't really see singleness as very positive, do we? How many of you guys actually see being single as positive? I'm just curious, be honest.
That's true.
Some of you. I have a lot of non-committals.
Wait, I didn't hear it. Lacey was talking.
Okay.
That'd be me.
So Isaac, next slide. So these are 3 explanations that I have either been told, I have had friends told, or I've even told myself. And honestly, some of these are true for some people, but for most of them, they really aren't true. Or they're really not that helpful. So one of them was, as soon as you stop looking for a relationship, that is when it comes. How many of you guys have heard that? I was told this all throughout high school. And so I came on that obviously, if I was still looking because I was in a relationship. I had one relationship in high school and that's all I've ever had. But otherwise, that's all my single life. However, this isn't really true for everyone. I mean, you take me for example as, okay, I stopped looking my sophomore year of college. I just said, you know, I've been single 2 years, who cares? I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm just going to live my life. And 3 years later, I'm still single. So, or let's go the opposite. How many of you guys know people that cannot be single? That they go from one person to the next? And like as soon as they want a relationship, they find one. So like this isn't helpful. Or how about singleness is a time when God gives us to focus on Him? I wish this was true. Like that would be so great, wouldn't it? If this was a time that, oh, we're supposed to be like focusing on God, it sounds like this is such a holy motive, a holy thing I've chosen. And for some, this is true. This is how they see their singleness. However, not everyone does that either. Because this asks the question is, then why isn't everyone called to be single? If singleness is a time that we can focus on God, why aren't we all called to be single? And the truth is we're not. It also just sends this message that, in some ways, that singleness somehow means closer to God. That marriage somehow doesn't. And that's just not true either. Because not all Christ-centered people are single, and not all married people are not. Like, you can be Christ-centered in both. Equal planes. And then the last one is singleness is a gift. I was told my singleness was a gift a lot. This is what women in my church like to tell me. Because I was young and didn't need it. Like, oh, it's a gift of freedom and all this stuff. Sure. However, I never saw this as a gift. For a long time, I never saw my singleness as a gift. And so for some people, this is great. But for others, it's really not helpful. It's not considered a good gift. In fact, this is the last thing that they want. How many of you guys just want to be in a relationship and rather be in a relationship than be single? Honestly, like I'm curious. Anyone? Or you would rather be single than in a relationship?
Oh, we'd rather be single than
All you non-committals. I know.
I say single.
So that's great. Because some people would choose to be single and they're like, this is a gift, but others would not. Okay, next. Next silent. So Paul talks a lot about singleness and marriage in 1 Corinthians 7. And he's not really, I wouldn't call this chapter a very romantic chapter. He's pretty practical in how he lays it out. But so I just grabbed a couple verses. We'll listen to one section, this is another one. So this is verse 7 through 9. I wish that all were as I myself am, which is single. But each has a particular gift from God, one having one kind, and another a different kind. To the unmarried and the widows, I say that it is well for them to remain unmarried as I am. But if they are not practicing self-control, they should marry. For it is better to marry than to be aflame with passion. Hold on. Sorry. think oftentimes what we see is like our life can't start until we're married. And honestly, that's not true. He's giving us this authority that singleness is valid. It's not less than marriage, it's equal with marriage in that sense. So in the next verses, which is 32 through 35, it's, I want you to be free from anxieties. The unmarried man is anxious about the affairs of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about the affairs of the world, how to please his wife, and his interests are divided. And the unmarried woman and the virgin are anxious about the affairs of the Lord, so that they may be holy in body and spirit. But the married woman is anxious about the affairs of the world, how to please her husband. I say this for your own benefit, not to put any restraint upon you, but to promote good order and unhindered devotion to the Lord. So basically what this is saying is that because being single, we have a lot less keeping us or taking our attention from pursuing God. Not saying that in married that you can't, it's just your attentions are divided. Not only are you supposed to pursue God, but you have to love your spouse. Your spouse now is walking with you. They are now a part of your life. You're no longer just an individual making individual choices. You have someone else to worry with, someone else to care for and to love and to walk with. And so what he's saying is that because these interests are divided, they now have to balance out this person as well as then how does God fit in this picture. Being single, we don't have to worry about that. Being single, you're independent, you're this individual person, and you can just focus straight with God. So in that way, it's cool. It really shows that it's not less than marriage. In some ways, there's a huge benefit to that. So here's some the next slide is, we have 3 perspectives of singleness. And this is really just kind of a general overview. Like, I know this isn't going to address everyone's feelings or questions, and we can do that later. But we'll start with John. So singleness is not a disease to be cured, but rather a stewardship to be lived, just like marriage. There's so many of us that treat singleness as if it's something to change at all costs. It's like it is the worst thing, it's disease, it's this ugly part of us. Like, having that relationship status on Facebook say single for some kills. They can't see. And so what happens is they'll rush into bad fits. How many of you guys know people that have ended up in relationships that are really unhealthy? People that are bad fits or not as good for them. It's a lot. I have a lot of friends. I had one friend who, she could not stand being single. She hated it. So she entered a relationship with this guy for a year, and he was incredibly emotionally abusive and manipulative. And she couldn't get out of it because she was so afraid to be single. Singleness is not a disease. Singleness is an opportunity. It's not simply to be avoided, nor a condition from one which one must escape. What I love about the second one is how you perceive your singleness, how you perceive it'll affect everything how you go out into the world. So if I see my singleness as an opportunity to serve and pursue and to love God, I'm going to live my life like that. I'm not going to live my life as if it can't start until I'm married. So, like, think about this. You take all the single people in this room, or all the single people in Singleness, and we all viewed this as this opportunity to go and serve God. What would happen in our cities if we devoted all that time that we spend into trying to win, in trying to get a relationship, trying to fit in, trying to be something that we're not, and instead serve God? What could happen in our cities? All that time you invest something can be done. Things can change because we have this time and this opportunity. Not saying that if you're in a relationship you can't, because you totally can. You can do it with your partner. But just because you're single doesn't mean you're less. And then the last one is for those of us who are followers of Christ, the very term singleness is a myth. Just for sense of clarity, I'm going to keep using the word singleness, but in this, we're not alone. Singleness implies that you are the single entity, that you are by yourself. But if you have a relationship with Christ, you're seriously not alone. He's with you all the time. And yeah, you're like, oh, why did Jesus the answer? Wow, we're in a church and you're telling me that Jesus is with me. But it's true. It's true.
Lizard.
You know? But, so we also were given, how many of you guys have friends and family and people that care about you, people that want to walk with you? You're not alone if you have people that want to support you, want to be there for you. And Christ's place is the main component to that. Okay. And then go to the last one. Sean Gunner, and I've been following his blog for a long time, and he blogs about singleness. He lives in East Asia, he's a Christian, and he just talks about these perspectives, and I love this quote. And it goes, I do want to simply state that life can and is lived well as a single adult. Singleness is not merely a holding tank until we graduate into marital bliss. It is a valid calling, just as marriage. I want to end with this. So, if you got anything from this, some of you, this may not matter to you. Some of you, this may fly over, but here's 3 points. They're not on slides, so you're going to have to listen. Marriage is not a greater calling than singleness, nor is singleness greater than marriage. They are both valid callings. Just because society tells you that you, in order to be happy, you have to graduate, you meet that person you love in your early 20s, you get married, have 2.5 kids, live in suburbia with white picket fence. Like, honestly, you laugh, but that's the average of how many kids we have. It's like that's what you think. You want that future in order to be happy, then to have grandkids and all that. That is not the only way to be happy. God has called us to be valid as single as well. Then the second one is how we think about our singleness will affect how we live out our single life. It's your opportunity to serve and serve fully. I think I've heard this word, reckless abandon, serving so fully that, because you don't have to make a decision. The reason why I got to come to Sammamish is because I wasn't in a relationship. I mean, there were a ton of other reasons, but that was a huge contributing factor. Because if I was in a relationship, I wouldn't have moved somewhere new. I probably would have moved somewhere close to where I thought they were going to be. Opportunities can come from being single because you have this freedom. Doesn't mean they can't when you're married. They can. It's just different. You have more freedom as a single. And then the last one is singleness is not merely a holding tank until marriage. Your life starts now. It doesn't start when you're married. It doesn't start when you're in a relationship. You can be happy and live a full life now. So, I'm going to pray, and then we're going to have a Q&A. And if you have no questions, we can go and start small groups. So, dear Heavenly Father, God, I just thank you for each person in this room. God, I pray that you will just allow us, as single individuals, Lord, to know that we can live fully in you, that we have happy lives, that we can serve you in a way that may be new and unexpected. I pray, God, that you will just challenge each of our thinking, that you will just push us into living with